Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, today we are jumping straight into something absolutely fascinating. We're unpacking the incredible science behind a concept called soft-wired, the idea that your brain is quite literally a work in progress. This is part one of our deep dive into this topic, and trust me, it is a real game changer. For the absolute longest time, we've all lived with this pretty bleak assumption about our brains. We thought that once we hit adulthood, well, our mental machinery was fully baked, set in stone, and from there it was just this slow, inevitable slide downhill. But today, drawing from Dr. Michael Merzenich's groundbreaking book Soft-Wired, we're stepping into what's essentially the early stages of a brain plasticity revolution. Think about physical fitness for a second. Decades ago, if you were jogging around the neighborhood just for fun, people thought you were totally eccentric. But today, we all accept that physical health is our own personal responsibility. Well, Dr. Merzenich is pointing us toward a massive paradigm shift where we treat the health of our minds with that exact same proactive mindset. But before we can talk about the solutions, we kind of have to confront the elephant in the room. It's that terrifying, quiet thought so many of us secretly harbor as the years tick by. You know the one, why am I slowly losing it as I get older? We watch what looks like this inexorable functional decline in ourselves and the people we love. We start forgetting names, right? We lose our train of thought right in the middle of a sentence, and we end up anxiously hoping for some magic elixir to save us, waiting for a miracle because we're secretly terrified of what the future holds for our minds. The legendary Fred Astaire actually once joked about this. He said that old age is like everything else. To make a success of it, you have to start young. It's funny, sure, but man, the underlying truth there is deeply sobering. Because the realities of aging and mental deterioration, they do not just happen overnight. They are the cumulative result of decades of mental habits and physiological changes. So if we actually want to make a success of our older years, we simply cannot afford to wait until the wheels start falling off to pay attention to our cognitive health. The groundwork literally has to be laid right now. Let me put this into perspective. If you live in the modern world, your average lifespan extends well into your 8th or 9th decade. You can very optimistically look forward to living past your 85th birthday. But Dr. Merzenich points out a truly terrifying reality. At 85 years old, there is roughly a 50% chance you will be formally identified as senile and demented. Let that sink in for a second. 50%. A literal coin flip. Heads, you keep your mind, tails, you lose it entirely. Those are not great odds at all, and it highlights exactly why we desperately need a completely new approach to how we treat our brains as we age. And the runway to this cognitive decline is incredibly long. Way before anyone gets a formal diagnosis, people often suffer from what's called mild cognitive impairment, or MCI, which slowly but surely strips away their ability to live independently. And get this. The pathological seeds, like Alzheimer's signature beta amyloid crystals, they're actually already visible in the brain scans of about half of normal 70-year-olds. Half! Even though only 7% of people actually have a formal diagnosis at that age. For Dr. Merzenich, this isn't just theory. He anchors this reality in the deeply personal tragedy of his own mother, Alma. She was this vibrant, sassy, brilliant woman who tragically lost the last 4 years of her life to the absolute grips of Alzheimer's. It's a heartbreaking loss, and it's just a stark, sobering reminder of exactly what is at stake here. So, for generations, we operated under this deeply fatalistic, totally outdated belief. We thought the brain was just like a machine. It reached physical maturity when you were a kid, and after that, the cogs just wore out, the gears got loose, and the whole thing slowly rusted away. Basically, you were stuck with whatever brain you built in childhood. But science has completely flipped the script, revealing a thrilling new reality. You come from you. You are not just some direct, unchangeable product of your genetics, and you're definitely not a machine that simply wears down. Your brain is a highly dynamic, living ecosystem that is totally capable of continuous, lifelong rewiring.
Which brings us to the absolute foundational concept for part one of this explainer, brain plasticity. In simple terms, this is your brain's built-in ability to continuously rewire its own machinery and functionally revise itself throughout the entire course of your natural life. And listen, this is not just a metaphor. When you learn or experience something new, the neurons in your head literally fire and wire together, physically strengthening their synaptic connections. Your brain is reshaping itself on a microscopic level. This is the ultimate antidote to cognitive decline. It proves that we actually have the physical power within us at absolutely any age to be better, to be more capable, and to bounce back from neurological pitfalls.
To truly grasp the sheer power of this plasticity, we have to talk about David. By his 20th birthday, David had not spoken a single understandable word. Now, throughout his entire childhood, he seemed to understand basic instructions perfectly well, but he just never spoke back. Because of this, he was relentlessly bullied, eventually pulled out of school, and formally labeled as attentionally and cognitively impaired. His prospects looked incredibly bleak, right? Honestly, most experts had completely written him off as a lost cause. But David had a mother who just flat out refused to give up. She brought him to Dr. Merzenich's clinical colleagues, and they made a stunning discovery. David actually had totally normal hearing, but he suffered from a severe auditory processing disorder, meaning his brain only very crudely encoded the sounds of words. So what did they do? They used plasticity to fix it. They put David through this intensive listening training specifically designed to physically rewire how his brain processed sound. By forcing his brain to repeatedly process specific audio frequencies, he was essentially doing neurological push-ups. And the results? Unbelievable. Just 2 months later, this 20-year-old man who had never spoken a word in his life began to talk. 1 month after that, he was holding simple, cogent conversations. He didn't just learn a neat trick, he literally grew the new neurological machinery he needed to interact with the world. Now, hearing a story like that, if our brains are really this incredibly adaptable, this perfectly plastic, you've got to ask the obvious question. Why are our modern brains struggling to keep up? If we all possess this amazing built-in superpower, why is cognitive decline such a massive, widespread epidemic today? Well, to figure that out, we need to pull back for a second and look at the totally unique evolutionary challenges facing the modern human brain. Think about the historical rate of human change. Let's take a super simple tool like the axe head. Our ancestors invented the very first version of it 1,000,000 years ago. Guess how long it took them to figure out how to strap a good handle onto it? Over 180,000 years. And it took another 174,000 years just to figure out how to balance the weight properly. The takeaway here is that for the vast, vast majority of human history, culture and technology advanced at a painfully, agonizingly slow rate. Our ancestors' brains simply were never forced to constantly adapt to radical, dizzying changes within a single lifetime. Contrast that ancient, slow-moving world with the reality we live in right now. Health prognosticators are actually predicting that by the middle of this century, the average human lifespan will extend well past 100 years. Now, evolutionarily speaking, long human lifespans were originally selected so that the elders could stick around as this stable resource library of accumulated cultural knowledge to ensure their clan survived. But today, the Earth is spinning faster and faster. We are being constantly challenged to completely modify our technical skills, adapt our social interactions, and shift our entire worldview over and over again for literally decades on end. And this constant pressure leaves us facing two very different paths in our fast-paced modern lives. On one hand, we have the tragic path of Dr. Merzenich's mother, Alma, who, despite those vibrant younger years, suffered a grueling 4-year decline into Alzheimer's, as her brain's plasticity essentially worked in reverse. But then, look at the incredible contrast in someone like Avram. Avram is an industrial chemist. While in his 80s, he invented a completely novel way to profitably produce sugar from waste wood. And now, at 93 years old, he's full of dynamism, actively inventing a way to make ordinary table sugar taste twice as sweet. Avram is living, breathing proof that a brain can continue to grow, to invent, and to thrive well into your 10th decade of life. So as we wrap up part 1 of our explainer on the science of brain plasticity, let's lock in your core empowering takeaways. First off, you are absolutely not stuck with a static declining brain, period. Second, you can strengthen your existing abilities at absolutely any age. Third, just like we saw with David, you can recover from neurological pitfalls and damage. And finally, you have the profound lifelong capability to continuously grow a more interesting, dynamic life. Your brain is this highly responsive instrument capable of nonstop strengthening, but, and this is a big but, only as long as you take active, intentional responsibility for it. Which leaves us with one final, provocative question to ponder today. What will you rewire next? Whether it's learning a completely new language, recovering a lost physical skill, or just engaging with the world a little differently so you don't lose that mental agility, the power is literally entirely within your skull. The brain plasticity revolution is here, and your brain is a work in progress. So it's time to get to work.